So it was always in my sights, and then more of just a dream, to be super competitive and to just be amongst them. My dad always, my dad always says it to me, and it's a funny thing where it really, at this point, it really annoys me because he often says it to me. The time when he says it to me now is when I don't do well. And it's so one of his favorite films is On the Waterfront with Marlon Brando, and there's a bit in it where Marlon Brando, he'd been messed around. His older brother had sort of done something negative with Marlon Brando's boxing career, where he'd ended up kind of on the outs of it. And when he at a really emotional moment, he goes, "Charlie, you messed me up. I could have been a contender." And my dad, who a sort of, he'd have been a poet in another life, I think. He sees that as the most poetic thing, where he's like, Marlon Brando didn't want to be a winner. He just wanted to be a contender. And so that kind of, dad used to say that to me the whole time.
All right, everyone, welcome back or welcome to the Water Ski Podcast. My name is Matteo and the goal of this podcast is to promote water skiing through the voices of people in the sport, some of which you may know, some of which you may not know. Although I have a sneaking suspicion that you know the name that I've interviewed for this three-part series, and that's Freddie Winter. Freddie is the current Masters champion, a world champion, 2017. He is one of the selected few people that has run 41 off, and he's done that a lot of times, 4 times in a row, only very recently. And Freddie, true, genuine guy, is a dear friend of mine, and the fact that we finally managed to sit down and have a long conversation about him and the sport. Really, I'm happy to share this with the skiing community and the world in general, let's say. Well, before we go any further, I want you to know that this podcast is brought to you by the H2O Pro Shop. H2O Pro Shop is the place to get all your water ski equipment with free shipping in the 48 continental United States and great international shipping rates, so they ship internationally as well. H2O Pro Shop is still shipping daily through the pandemic and always works hard on getting the items you need quickly. Social distance out on the water with some new toys for your boat. Email them at sales@h2oproshop.com and they'll be happy to help you with recommendations and any questions you may have. Take 10% off your orders directly through the online store now with discount code TWSP, all capital letters. So the Water Ski Podcast, TWSP, on all applicable items. But hurry, because this discount will only last for the weeks you will hear their name here on the Water Ski Podcast. So if you're in need of gear, you may want to get online and get some gear for you. Skis, wake surfs, wakeboards, and more from the biggest brands in the industry. H2O Pro Shop, founded by skiers, run by skiers, and made for skiers. That's h2oproshop.com, or you can call them at 1-888-789-5404, and you can use the code on their website, TWSP, for 10% off. This episode is also brought to you by the Flowpoint Method. The Flowpoint Method is a brand new online water ski training program developed by Jenny LeBeau and Marcus Brown, whom Freddie really praises in this episode. Marcus gets praise all over. He's a knowledgeable, good dude, And him and Jenny created this amazing program that really taps into water skiing and helps you improve, but not just by where your hips are and what your fin setup should be. It's really about what matters. The physical preparation, the mental preparation, technical understanding, like they really cover it all. Nutrition. I love it. I was just on the phone with Jenny a few days ago because I've been struggling with my arm, and she really gave me some good exercise that actually have been allowing me to ski fairly well, but just ski, you know. So stoked about this. I'll be collaborating with them on the mindset section of the Flow Point method. They have daily, weekly updates and very extensive library of videos, instructionals, and writings. You can finally remove all the guesswork and get the most out of your time on the water. You can become a member of the Flow Point method by going to thewaterskipodcast.com/flowpoint method, one word, or click on the link in the show notes. So thank you to our sponsors. Now let's jump into this first part of the interview with Freddie. Freddie here talks about, like other guests, his early days on the water, growing up in England and growing up with his sister, competing together. And we cover quite a bit of ground, you know, like going through the junior ranks in the UK and then showing up on the European scene, all the way until his first ever 39 off or 10.75 meters in tournament. So without further ado, enjoy this first part and stick around because part 2 will be up on Saturday. Enjoy.
All right.
Let's just jump into it, man.
Let's jump in.
Welcome to the Waterski Podcast, buddy.
What an unbelievable honor. I have to say, I will admit that I've been waiting for this day. This is quite exciting.
I know. That's why I'm happy to do this, you know, like I know you've been listening to, you've been, you know, shall I say, a big fan.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
So now I'm ready to hear your story, and I know that a lot of people are waiting for it.
Well, we'll see. Hopefully I can, I don't know, shed some insight and maybe try not to talk too much rubbish.
I think we'll be okay. Okay. Listen, classic question, or you know it by now.
I know it by now.
How'd you get into the sport?
Similar to most everyone, I guess. Mum and dad, good old mum and dad. Still, just talked to them this morning. They're very upset with me that I'm still skiing every day during this whole deal. But so mum and dad. I was born in London, which, you know, if you didn't know water skiing, you would probably say that you know, the UK would not be a hotspot for water skiing. And then, of course, as in the sport, we know that the best water skier of all time came from England. So, mum and dad were skiing every weekend at the lake, and we would all go down together. I didn't have a choice in it. You know, I'm sure from when I was 1 week old, Dad was taking me down to the lake, that was Thorpe Lakes, the host of 3 World Championships: 1975, 1980. I always get those wrong. 81 or 83, I think 81, and then 87. Andy Mapple's first World Championship.
Yeah.
So I was there every weekend, and then you know, well, hey, do you want to have a go? Age 4 or 5, and I do remember going out with. There was a real good gang down there. I feel like they had some sort of nickname, but it was a bunch of guys probably who were about the same age. They were probably about the same age as what I am now, maybe even a little bit younger. But like, you know, I remember, I think Billy Wilmot, famous name in Thorpe history, took me for my first ski set. And I remember being on the bar, and then I thought, I remember quite well. I was like, oh, this is pretty easy. You know, you can get up on 2 skis. I mean, like anyone can. And so I decided to give my mum a wave, and then I fell in, and everyone laughed at me, and I felt a bit stupid. But so that was kind of it. And then, you know, from there, same thing. You know, well, I'm here every weekend. Let's do it. And skiing as much as possible. And I think. So the way I kind of remember it, I mean, I started skiing when I was about 5, and then kind of got really into it. I probably trained most every weekend, you know, in the summer months from about 8, and then I did my first winter when I was 10. I remember it was a very big deal when my parents said to me, "Freddie, would you like a dry suit?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess so. That's what you do." So I didn't quite know what I was getting myself into, because then, of course, my parents had invested. You know, these dry suits are very expensive, and you know, so I sort of had to commit to skiing that winter, and I got my block booking,
So back already at the time, your parents were dry suiting, skiing in November, December, like.
Yeah. No, I mean, my parents don't seem to do things by halves. Like, they've been. Dad was probably skiing for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years before I was born. Mum for 2 or 3, maybe a little bit more. But yeah, no, they loved it. And I mean, they had very stressful jobs. They'd work all week, and I think that was kind of even if they were going to a, really honestly a horrible ski lake, which is freezing cold.
Right.
I mean, it was a gorgeous ski lake, but it's horrible because of the temperature, and they'd be in their dry suit, and that was their release from the stressful job that they had. So and they still ski all the time. They love it. I mean, they're in love with the sport as much as anyone, really, which is so cool for me, because I mean, and actually that was such an important part of my development, was how much they loved it. Was because, am I allowed to swear? I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
Yeah, maybe not excessively.
No, not
but,
excessively. No, okay.
It's gonna end up being explicit, I'm assuming.
Yeah. No, I mean, they didn't give a shit. Like,
right.
Really, if I skied well or not. They did. They cared about me. They wanted to be happy. But it wasn't like, Freddie, I'm putting all my life into you, and you better bloody go and run a PB. And if you don't, then, I'm going to be upset with you.
Yeah, there are things to worry about.
Yeah,
right?
well.
Give some context. Like your parents were in high stressful jobs. Like, what were they doing?
I mean, so both corporate lawyers, and didn't rub off on me very well. But they're very smart people, and they sort of had some. So like I say, water skiing was their release, and so we'd go to the Gosfield 3-round tournament with our friend Vince Turp.
Yeah.
On a weekend, and October, it's bloody freezing. Dad goes out and runs his 2 at 12, and he's ecstatic, and then I go out, and he doesn't care if he cares, like I said, but he's not sitting there kind of like I saw some of my competitors, and I'm sure you've seen it as well.
Yeah.
The people who are my age, you'd see their parents like laser eyes focus on their kids on the dock. Are they concentrating? Are they taking this seriously?
Right,
and then they come off the water, and it would be like, what, are you so stupid that you can't go through those gates that you missed? And then the kid would break down in tears, and oh yeah, no wonder that kid didn't make it and didn't decide to carry on at past the age of about 15, 16, when they could start thinking about driving a car, and
Exactly.
So that was definitely to my advantage. I don't think that my parents could have been in any way better at sort of productively encouraging me without forcing me, and I'm that's sort of been shown, I think, by the way that I've never really questioned how much I love water skiing, and it was like I say, encouragement versus pushing, forcing, negative.
Right.
It was all positive, and that was amazing. I'm still still thankful to them for that. I mean, because it could have been over before it started, and this this sport has given me so much. I mean, I can't begin to describe how lucky I feel to have had water skiing in my life, and it made a life from it, and here I am at 30 years old, and it's my career. But if my parents had kind of been more negative and more like the sort of, I would say, it sounds bad, but probably the average ski mum.
Yeah, no.
I could have hated it and then quit before I'd even started, and then I'd have a really boring life sitting in an office chair in maybe in London. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Well, let's continue that journey to that you went through. Like, do you remember your first tournament?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know me, I can remember most things about most tournaments I've ever done, mate. Yeah, I can.
Well, let's
remember.
go with the first one, because I've never heard that one.
So Tallington Lakes, 2000. I was 10 years old. It would have been sometime in June, and I think my dad would get off work early. And Tallington's, I think it's like. Well, I did the journey this year, actually. I went to see Glenn Campbell, and he lives near there. So okay. I went to see him at Christmas. But so it's like you can go from King's Cross, which is in North London, to down on the train in like maybe an hour and a half. And so I think I had a nanny or someone that would take me to train station. I met Dad there, and then we zoomed to Tallington, you know, after he finished his work. And then I remember sitting in the car. I guess he'd driven us. But so it was an evening slalom.
Okay.
Or it was an evening slalom. So, you know, late in the day on like a Monday or a Tuesday. But I remember sitting in the car before and crying my eyes out because, I mean, I had been so excited about this thing, and here it was, and I was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Which, if I'm being honest, I kind of get to that point at some of the tournaments I'm at these days where you're just like, oh my God, I've worked so hard and this is so stressful.
You cry in the car alone before like
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Well, hopefully not. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, I sat in the car and, you know, the old Land Rover Discovery and was crying, went out. And I think, you know, Dad said, just run your first pass. And I'd be pretty certain that I went out at 24 miles an hour. And I ran 24, 26, 28, and ran 3 at 30. And I mean, I have this image of my dad just beaming from ear to ear because, like, you know, like I said, he cared. It would be none of the negative, but all the positive.
Right.
So I was so happy. And you know what was super cool was, and that, you know, that's water skiing. I'm not going to say I was going to started to think that it was, you know, English water ski culture. It's not. It's everywhere. And that's what's great is everyone that was there. You know, it was Tallington Lakes is kind of, I'm not going to say it was quite the same as Prince's Club. It wasn't quite on the same scale, but it was a really cool place. It's still there. I mean, less tournament water skiing happening there, but you know, there was a bar and there was, you know, like a very cool place to hang out. And so everyone was just like, oh, hey, good job. You know, we saw you out there. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. You know, these guys think I'm something. So like, I like that. And all right, the second round, I think I ran like, you know, 2.5 at 28. So it was, but you know, immediately, you know, you set your sights high and then, but right. Yeah, that was pretty cool. And then, so yeah, I was 10, and I think the second or third tournament I did, we flew up to Scotland to do, again, Dad took me with my sister, and my sister had never done a tournament before, but we flew up to Scotland. Sister was 8, and we did the British Nationals. And, you know, of course, that was probably like a month later, so I'd improved again. I ran, you know, I don't know, 3 at 32, I think I ran, and my sister was like, she ran her first pass ever, and it was her first tournament. It was awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, those formative tournaments, you kind of look at. And actually, I remember, and how cool is this? I remember that was the last junior nationals that I skied in that Will Asher was at. And I remember, I think I saw Steve Glanfield at the airport, who's, you know, now a guy I ski with all the time. Right. You know, he's the best and super awesome to me. And then I remember, like, even, you know, I was 10 years old and Will is, I think, you know, 8 years older than me. But I remember going, oh, that's Will Asher. Right. And he's here, you know. And then look at where Will is now, you know. It's pretty, you know, even from then you just knew, you know. Yeah.
That story's been going on for a while.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But let's get back to yours, Dave. So you have these first year tournaments, and clearly it sounds like the experience is positive. Like, you know, you're going with Dad. The environment seems upbeat, should I say, you know. And then that season finishes. Like, were you thirsty already? Like you wanted to improve, or was it more still something you did with your dad and your mom and it was fun? Like, when did it start to sort of like become the thing for you?
I mean, I've always been a fairly competitive person, so I always wanted to be better than I am, you know. Right. Still am, you know. And I remember that first nationals. I think I ran 3 at 32, and then there was a guy who was just the same age as me and so much better than me. His name was Christian Trevor, and like, you know, I was just like, wow, imagine being that good. I think he ran into 16 at 34, and I was like, imagine being that good. And I remember just being like, you know, okay, that's my aim. All I want in life is to be as good as Christian Trevor. Right. And that was like, okay. And then the cool thing was, I think I'm getting this right. I mean, a year later, I think I went and beat him at nationals, and he underperformed. But right. I ran 4 at 34. and he ran like a 3.5 or whatever. And that was like, I was like, oh my God, like I'm a national champion. You know, I'm 11 years old. I'm a national champion. And that was pretty awesome. Because I wasn't that, you know, I was pretty okay, but you know, not excessively good at any of the other sports at school. You know, I would play, I was pretty good at rugby. I was decent at rugby, but like football, not all that. Cricket, not all that. So it was cool to have like my thing.
Yeah.
And
sports that you highly respect on top of this.
I mean, yeah. Like, cricket, rugby, yeah, whatever. But like cricket and football, I mean, it's a religion for me almost.
That's what I'm saying. The sports that you were probably the best at, the sports that nowadays you respect immensely.
Yeah, I mean, incredible. So I got that first national championship, and you know, it's an under 12 national championship, and you know, in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't mean a whole lot. But to me, that was like the coolest thing in the whole world. You know, I was so excited. And so that kind of just like, funny enough, my mum found an album or something. She was sending me pictures of the podium from that tournament. And they, you know, Mastercraft Boats were supporting the tournament of UK. And they bought this massive trailer and a huge podium and there's big banners and stuff. And it looks like, you know, it's better than a lot of pro events.
Right.
And I'm like this, you know, dumb little 11-year-old kid, you know, with a big dumb grin.
Who won U12 British Nationals.
Yeah. And I had the picture. I was looking at it. I'm like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, I mean, so I've always kind of wanted to be, you know, and of course, like I think I've always been a big ski nerd. So, you know, as soon as I got into water skiing, it's like, okay, I like water skiing. Okay, I want to watch all the guys do it. Well, why is it not on TV? That sucks. It's not on TV. But there was like World Cup stops. I think we had 2 or 3 of those in Thorpe. Mm-hmm. And then the Café de Colombia tour. And so I remember I watched Jodie Fisher win like with 5.5 at 10.75 in 2000. I think it was either 2000 or 2001. There was one in 2000, I know that for sure. But, you know, I'd watch these and just, you know, nerd out on them. So I remember like there was that kind of, okay, these are the guys that are my level, or not my level, like, you know, some of them way better than me, but like, you know, they're my age and I want to go and compete with them. But then you kind of go, well, what are the chances that I might be able to one day, you know, kind of be like these guys that I'm seeing go and do this incredible stuff on the lake, which I train at, you know, Thorpe Lakes.
So you went there like live, you watched them?
Yeah, I watched them live. Yeah. You know, like your situation when you went and watched the Worlds when you were young. I mean, like I would go there, I would turn up and I would be, you know, literally like if someone would try and talk to me during when someone's passed on, I'd be like, hey, listen, mate, talk to the hand. I don't care.
Right.
You know, like I'm seriously into this. And, you know, it was, I mean, my favorite skier was Andy Mappel, obviously, because I'm English and he was the best. So, I mean, what is it?
Seems appropriate, yeah.
You know, a 10, 11-year-old wants to support the best. So you know, and then the Brits, Glenn Campbell, Jodie Fisher, and then you know, Wade Cox, and you know, all around that time, and Prince's Pro-Am, you know. Well, we both competed there, and I competed there a bunch, but I mean, I did that the whole way through my youth, and Duncan Hancock, who put that together, just did a phenomenal job. And how cool is that? You know, I listened to the other podcast, the Spraymakers podcast, and you know, the first thing out of Rossi's mouth was Prince's was awesome, you know, for his favorite ski sites, and he said that Jason Paradis had said, you've got to come to, if you're going to do a pro tournament outside of the US, you've got to come to this one. And I remember thinking, wow, like, you know, Duncan, a Kiwi, you know, who was doing an awesome job at Prince's, I remember thinking, wow, this guy is awesome because he's bringing all of these guys to the UK, so I can see them.
Yeah, exactly.
And not just that, but like as I would get older, that tournament ran till 2011. But as I would get older, I'd be like, okay, you know, I remember very well Andy and all this getting these huge scores, and I remember going, okay, well, I ran, you know, say one at 14, one at 28 off at 34. So I've got to get 1, 2, 3, 4. I got to get 5 past. I got to change my speed. I'm like, okay, I'm this many boys behind them. Yeah. And and I was like, kind of calculating. Okay, I got this many years, and I got to catch up with them, and you know, so I've always it was always in my sights, and then more of just a dream, you know, to be super competitive and to just be amongst them. My dad always, you know, my dad always says it to me, and it's a funny thing where it really, at this point, it really annoys me because he often says it to me. The time when he says it to me now is when I don't do well, and it's so one of his favorite films is On the Waterfront with Marlon Brando, and there's a bit in it where Marlon Brando, he'd been messed around. His older brother had sort of done something negative with Marlon Brando's boxing career, where he'd ended up kind of on the outs of it. And when he at a really emotional moment, he goes, Charlie, you messed me up. I could have been a contender. And
right.
my dad, who you know, a sort of, he'd have been a poet in another life, I think. He sees that as the most poetic thing, where he's like, Marlon Brando didn't want to be a winner. He just wanted to be a contender. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of, dad used to say that to me the whole time, you know, like, this is quite emotional.
Keep going.
Where he would, you know, he was like, you know, just be a contender, you know, that like, just get amongst them and you don't have to win. But, you know, as long as, if you're there, you've made it. Yep. And so, you know, and now he says it, like when I'm all upset because I've gone to Masters and, you know, not made the finals and fallen where I shouldn't have. And he'll be on the phone, he'll go, Fred, you're a contender. And I'm like, I don't care if I'm a contender. I want to win every tournament. I don't want to be a contender. I want to be a winner. But he's right that actually if you maybe, you know, I don't think it's a loser's mentality. I think, you know, if you can make it to the point where you're a contender and you can be amongst the best, and you're considered amongst the best, then actually you've done something that's really worthwhile.
Yeah, and it puts in a position to where eventually you get wins.
Yeah, exactly. And so I, you know, so to have, I wanted to be a contender, and
so that became kind of like, what's the guy's name that you were competing against in under 12s?
Christian Trevor.
Yeah, so already then you had that, right?
Oh, like, for sure. I remember. I mean, this is really sad. I feel like there's going to be a few times when I'm talking here where I'll say some things that are maybe a little bit embarrassing. But like, I remember
you tend to do that often. It's okay.
So like, I was at a different club and I saw a picture of this guy on a podium or something. I remember thinking, man, imagine being that guy. He must walk around going. Because I was 10 at this time and I hadn't ever won a national championship, and he was way, way better than me, and I had no chance of beating him. I remember thinking, God, that guy must just walking around, you know, with his, you know, 5 feet off the ground, just thinking that I'm just knowing, not thinking, but knowing that he is the greatest, that he is a great, better person than I am. And so, yeah, I mean, I always sort of wanted to be like that, and that, you know, that's a. And
that continued, but I want to stay with the. I think it's a particular. I don't know, environment or upbringing that you grew up as a skier in, because I mean, of course, by parents, you know, like that's a lot of the stories that we hear. Parents, very passionate skiers, right?
Yeah. Well, you know that because they come to your tournament every year and they absolutely love it. And
oh yeah, I knew it before then. It was just like meeting them the first time was clear, right? Yeah. But also like, you know, busy people. So were you like kind of begging to go to the lake? Was it one of those things where like, come on, Dad, let's go ski. Come on.
No, because this is also pretty, I would imagine it's fairly unique to the UK as a situation where skiing in the US or, you know, in a lot of places in Europe, it's a lot more expensive. So, you know, the margins are bigger. But in the UK, for whatever reason, you know, it's a general ski set. Just, you know, turn up for a ski set. It's cheaper. Mm-hmm. It's not $75. It's not, you know, $80. It's maybe, you know, £25,
right?
Which is $30, $35, whatever. So they run it where it's just they just book it up morning to evening, full. And so what would happen at Thorpe, where I was, you get a block booking. So my parents would say to me every 6 months, because you'd book for 6 months, they'd say, okay, you want to carry on skiing for the next 6 months? I'd be like, yep. And they say, okay, but it's a commitment. Remember, if we book these slots for you, we can't cancel them. And the money's going to come out of our account. You know, I'm making them sound like they were guilting me, but they just wanted me to understand which was the right thing to do, that this was a commitment that I couldn't just do it for a month and then go, no, I'm not into it. And that was a big deal when I was going to do the winter skiing. Hey, look, it's going to be hard, but if you're going to do it, then, just commit to it. And then we don't have to do it next year. But if you're going to do it, then do it this year.
So, which I think it's an important conversation. I mean, it's kind of like the conversation my dad gave me, every season.
Yeah.
So in Italy, I must say we're a little, not as committed, should I say, than the British skiers, because we wouldn't ski that much in the winter. But every season, my dad would tell me, hey, you want to do it, then you do it. Then next year, if you decide not to, that's another story.
Yeah.
But no, for sure.
That's exactly it. So I'd have that conversation with my parents every 6 months. And it became a formality,
right.
after however long. But for a couple of times. And so I had, in the winters we used to ski at. My slot was 12:15 and 1:15. I'd always ski an hour apart, and so that was kind of the middle of the day when there was the most sun. And then in the summers we'd kind of go at I would ski at 3:15 and 4:15. And my parents would, and my sister as well. So it was 4 sets an hour, and so they would book 2 hours. So they would book, say, 12 till 2 in the winter, and so and then, the driver would have his driver's sheet, and he'd see. And I then went on to have this when I was a driver at Thought, which I later went on to be family winter, family winter, family winter, family winter.
Right.
Straight in a row. So that's So I would I knew I was going to be there. 2 sets on a Saturday, 2 sets on a Sunday for those 6 months, and then again for the summer. So no, I didn't really going, hey, let's go to the lake. I wouldn't be like that, because I had this. It was actually really cool because I kind of had it scheduled. It was like I had Monday to Friday was school.
Yep.
And play some sport. I wasn't the best at it, but I loved playing football. I loved cricket and rugby. And those were the times for friends. And then I had my weekend, which was, I'm not going to go play football on a Saturday because I'm going to go to the lake.
Yeah.
So I kind of, had it segmented. And I've kind of, that's kind of something that I sort of had until a lot more recently, where I kind of had it was a little, I definitely had my time for friends and social. And then I had my skiing side. And that's obviously mixed together since I moved to the US and stuff. But, really up till I was 23, I had, we'll get to that later maybe, but I was university was, none of my friends really knew anything about water skiing. And
yeah, but I think, do you think that's maybe going back to what we sort of hinted at in terms of people staying in the sport, do you think that helped you stay in the sport, that balance of it's not always skiing, buoys, people at the lake,
Yeah, I think so. I think that, and I think also looking at my parents where to them it was a release, I don't want to overplay it, but they had jobs where they were working 10, 11 hours a day, and so they would go to the lake on the weekend, and you see it on T-shirts and whatever, a better a bad day at the lake than a good day in the office,
Right.
So that's really until they retired a few years ago, that's really how they saw it. So I always realized, okay, water skiing is to be enjoyed, and I did enjoy it. I was a little shit at a lot of times. I'm sure some of my coaches would say that I was, too hard on myself. I would throw a tantrum if I didn't ski well, but I definitely always relished going to the lake and kind of and enjoying it. And apart from anything else, being at the lake was great because we'd drive out there. It's 45 minutes, and then we'd spend some time there for maybe 3 or 4 hours, whatever. And there's a big conker tree, and I'd climb that all the time and get stuck in it. And there was someone with a football, and I'd hang out with all these guys who were, a lot older than me, who were, I was young, but there was this gang of people at Thorpe who were, I have no idea how old they were, but they were just a good bunch of friends, and they would just let me be part of the gang, and they were 25 to 30 or whatever, and I was 10, and they'd treat me like I was part of the group, and I loved it.
Yeah.
So I really had my kind of, I can't really call them buddies, but I definitely thought they were buddies at the time, and
of course
they were, looking back, so many things lined up, everything was so positive, and I had good people. Paul Seaton, who maybe, I'm not sure you maybe know his name. He was legendary, kind of in England. I might be slightly messing this up, but he jumped a world record. he medaled at a Worlds, and then he jumped a world record, but he had a little bit of crash on the landing, and he went out again and jumped again, landed, but he'd broken his leg on the first jump, and so he completely busted himself. So he was sort of coaching at Thorpe, and he ran the place until about 98. So I was 8 years old, or whatever, and he was coaching. He was awesome, and then John Battleday came in. Who we know runs the Andy Mapple Pro-Am.
Yeah.
And he was great and really good guy. Those early years, especially, where his coaching. I mean, I would not be anywhere near the level that I'm at if it wasn't for his just ability to simplify everything. Mm-hmm. Everything was so simple. And would, 10 words, a concept or whatever, like not overcomplicated. And that's what you need when you're a kid. Mm-hmm. But the cool thing he did actually, which I think was probably the best thing that he did, apart from all the coaching, maybe more important than the coaching, was he would ask me questions where he would, instead of barking at me or just being like, hey, you're doing this, you need to do this. It was, hey, you're doing this, why is that? Hey, what happened at Boy 3? Hey, why are you getting like this movement, into Boy 4, and
interesting.
So, and I think that stood me in really good stead to, I'd say that when I got to my very late teens and early 20s, when I was kind of a little bit, we'll get to that, but like it stood me in good stead to coach myself.
Yeah.
Because even though he was really he knew exactly what was going on, and it would have been easier for him, honestly, to kind of be like, do this, right. do this. But actually, he made me think about what I was doing, and so I wasn't a robotic, taking orders.
Right.
It was okay, I understand that thought process. Okay, well, that's why I need to do that. That's why. And so you can kind of end up thinking analytically versus just repeating.
Yeah, no, like he might have kept the coaching itself simple in terms of like whenever he would give you something, it would be like something simple, but it was prefaced by him making you think about what was going on, which certainly, served you well later on. Because let's face it, like even for those who have like a consistent coach in their later years, if they don't have some kind of awareness of what's going on, they're a little bit doomed to fail.
Well, I completely agree, and I look around at the guys that I ski against, and I think every one of them is very self-analytical about their skiing and has a game plan, but also is adaptable.
Yeah.
And I think that's the guys that were very talented and very, had huge ability, but without the sort of adaptableness or the self-intrigue to analyze. I think those guys maybe got weeded out a little bit ago. And so, you're kind of going through and getting the backstory of a lot of the guys that are at the top. And I think that those guys, I believe that you'll get that same sort of thing from them. Is like, they learn it somewhere along the way to self-analyze.
Yeah, no, for sure. Whether out of necessity or out of the coaching style, or maybe they didn't used to, and then they got to a point where something happened. That coach left rather than, being told what to do wasn't enough to run that particular pass. Eventually, or by sheer curiosity, right?
Yep.
Like wanting to understand it. I think whatever situation brought it up, eventually all the guys that are at the top and the women too have that sort of like, I need to understand it. I need to figure it out. You know. Going back to the line that we sort of started in terms of like, imagine, right? Imagine if it could be. When was the first time you represented the UK at an international tournament?
Oh, this is a good one. It was 2004, Lake Krenek, Czech Republic. My first time. Well, no, okay, that's not quite true. That was my first European Championships. I went to a when I was, I think, 13. I went to the youth criterium in France in Roquebrune.
Oh yeah,
and I think early October it was, and I really can't remember how I did. I sort of did middling, didn't do particularly well, didn't do particularly badly. But there was, the British team had actually a really solid. That was when we had what we called the world class. There was a lot of money in British water skiing. I mean,
it was a lot of funding.
One of the best in the world. I think if really, really tip top. And so there was people employed to kind of go, right, well, that is how we're going to deal with development. I mean, I think that that's just not happening today, sadly. And I feel like looking back, they would it was pretty cool. They would there was a bit of money going around, so they go, okay, hey, we want to send you to this tournament. It's not a big tournament, but it's a little bit bigger than what you've been doing. So I went there and I enjoyed it, and but of course I had to 3 event, which was kind of funny because I remember very well. I thought about this the other day. Like I would always end up feeling I had to apologize to the guy that took us there. His name was Gary Shipman, and I remember like, oh, Gary, I fell on that weight back to back. I feel bad, man. Like you've put all your effort in to kind of bring me out here, and I'm just such a useless tricker. I'm sure he didn't care at all. But I mean, because it wasn't, he was happy to be there or whatever. But like, I did feel sort of like, oh, I owe this guy because I've let him down. He's my captain.
Right.
So that was my first time away from home. I went, that was a lot of fun. Went to France and did all the naughty 13-year-old, things and like, oh, let's, our coaches have gone to bed. Let's sneak out and go have a swim in the swimming pool. Let's jump the fence and let's get in trouble. Let's, all good times. And then I remember so the next time I represented the UK, I was in Lake Krennic, and I was so nervous. Someone had said to me on my way out there, because I was doing pretty well. I was running 32 off, and that would have put me somewhere around.
Yeah, contention for a podium under 14 men.
Yeah,
in those
but
years.
but also like there wasn't really anyone that was going to 3 at 12. So I was there or thereabouts. I was kind of like I could run. I don't know if I had done it, but I could run 2 at 12, and I was doing it quite a lot in practice. And I turn up there, and I remember I was going out at 16, and someone convinced me, someone who shouldn't have been telling me that what to do skiing wise, that later realized that I should go out at 18. And I remember, so I went out, super nervous, didn't have a car to cry in, but I would have cried in a car if I had been given the opportunity. I mean, and we'd been there for a week of training, and I was staying with all the other guys, and they were some really, really good skiers. And I was my first time, and I went. I think I got 3 boys and crashed on the way to 4 on my first pass. And dude, that was to me, it was just the end of the world. And it was a disaster. And I remember I went to bed that night, and I remember thinking wishing, not a religious guy, but I would have prayed if I was, but I'd have been just please, just let the day start again when I wake up tomorrow. And I remember waking up the next day and being like, oh no, I made it till the next day. I wish I was able to start it again,
Right.
Oh well. But and so that was definitely a very low point. And it motivated me to be better and to not kind of, I knew I had the ability, but didn't. I got nervous and messed up. I ran that pass in my sleep. Shouldn't have gone out. Shouldn't have changed my whole setup, which is a lesson for later. But yeah, that was that was 14, and it took me till I was 17 to make a final at a European under 17s.
So your last year in juniors.
Last year in juniors, yeah, and so I went to. They didn't put me on the team the following year because I'd messed up, and also because it was my first year in juniors and there was better skiers.
It's tough to make it the first year in juniors.
Yeah. And so I remember my sister went, and I was so upset. I'm like, I want to be there. She's going. It's not fair. And she did really well. So I went the second year in juniors and kind of didn't make the final. I just screwed up. And the next year I went out and made the final and I was second place in the final. I ran 2.5 at 11, and in the final I ran 2 at 11, and I was second, but I tied with 2 other guys, but beat them on countback. And the guy who beat me was so much better than me.
Right.
Beat me by 5 boys, Sasha guns.
Okay.
And I felt like I'd won because he was that much better than me. I was like,
one of those.
It was like I came here to get second, and I got second. You know, I couldn't have won; it wasn't possible. So I felt like I won, and so that was really cool. That was my first European medal, and I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Sorry, like, you sort of threw it in there, but like throughout this time where you were not representing the team and getting few more opportunities to be competitive, like a contender, as your dad would say, your sister was along. Like she was making the team.
Oh, my sister was way better than me, and I mean this shows the negative side of my competitiveness was that I was so jealous. But I mean, no. And that, you know, she might end up listening to this and she's not going to be surprised about it. She knew. I mean, she knew that when she went and ran a PB, I was like 100 miles an hour trying to get a PB. I mean, I wanted it, like, it would make me want it more. And I remember one year, like, she went out and ran it would have been my last year of under 14s, and she ran a British record. And, you know, Nicole Arthur was world champion, and my sister was probably 7 or 8 years younger than her. And Nicole had won every world championship, you know, under 17, under 21, and world championship. And my sister was breaking all of her records.
So she was on that path.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, she was so good. And she, you know, so she under 12, you know, and these are maybe not numbers that people would be particularly impressed with right now because, you know, the standard has gone up. But I'm telling you, back then, these were pretty amazing. I mean, my sister ran like 2 at 13, 2 at 32, aged 12 at 34 miles an hour.
Right.
So I mean that's pretty solid. I mean, and that was national record, and so of course the certificate would go up on the wall, and I never had a record, and I was like, God.
Oh yeah, downstairs where all the certificates are.
Well, it was before that, but I mean, it would go up on the wall, and I was like, oh, I really want a record certificate. I don't have one. I wasn't that close to all of our records. So, and then under 14, she ran 4 at 12, at 55, at 34.
That's big.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
really big.
she was good for it. I mean, she could run it, and so she was a huge motivator as well. I mean, and she ended up kind of, you know, not enjoying it as much, whatever. She still skis, you know, once in a while, but like she didn't carry that on in the same way, you know, various reasons. But you know, through those early years, I was like, my sister was way better than me, and I remember one of the girls I skied against when I was like 15. Yes, I was 15, and the girl I skied against literally said, who like I wasn't unfriendly with, but like I guess she wasn't the best friend of mine. She goes to me, she's like, yeah, it must be pretty miserable to like have your sister be so much better than you, and it hurt me.
I bet.
I mean, it hurt. Like I don't think I ever spoke to that girl again. I mean, like I was so mad. I was like, that's a really mean thing to say because the things that hurt you the most are true.
Yeah.
And she was better than me. So yeah.
But I'm interested in, like, you know, you guys were going to Europeans together all of a sudden, like you were, you know.
We did one together. We only did one. We did a few sort of international tournaments together, yeah. Like but we did the one in 2006, which was in Belgium. She came fourth. I didn't make the final. She came fourth, I think. Oh, she came second. She was right there. I think she never won one, but she got a few seconds and a few fourths. Yeah. She was always nearly on the podium or nearly on the top.
Right.
I think she, you know, always really close. But yeah, that was the only one Europeans we did together. But you know, that's pretty. But you know, that was also very normal. I mean, you know, like any team that's gone from Britain in the last, you know, junior team that's gone from Britain in the last 20 years. I mean, probably since the dawn of time, has been generally you'll have some siblings.
Yeah.
And you know, so it was me and my sister. There was Rich Forrest and Georgina Forrest. There was George Mailing and Annie Mailing, and me, Rich, and George all the same age, and then Annie, Georgina, and my sister all the same age. So like it all kind of lined up. And
yeah, it's true. There have always been that trend of being Charlotte and Chris.
There you go. Yeah. But exactly, yeah, just a few years after, and but yeah.
So you know, Freddie, you were saying how obviously, you know, your sisters was kind of there contending, you know, like either just on the podium or on the podium, you know. But you got second, you said, at your last Junior Europeans. give me maybe whatever you want about it. Maybe some details about the tournament, how you were feeling, what that second place did for you personally.
Well, so it was again in France. All these tournaments happened in France. There seemed to be a lot that was always seemed to be there or thereabouts during my junior career. But it was a big moment because it sort of validated all the work I'd been doing. Because basically, I had identified that I wanted to be the best water skier in the world, before my first Europeans, and I'd fallen at the first hurdle. Go to an international tournament, which to me, like junior Europeans, under 14 Europeans is a huge deal.
A lot of people, a lot of days, like important. Yeah. You prepare for it the whole year.
Well, but also just in an ideological sense, it's a European Championships. Right. Like it's like it's not the logistics of it. It's the what it means in your heart. So, and I think I came third to last because there was another couple of losers like me that missed their first pass before me. So third to last. So, it was out of 40 kids. That was pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
And then, again, like I need to make top 12 to make the final. I came 14th or whatever and skied way below myself. I had scores, deep 12 into 11 and I missed I went halfway down 13 meters. So that was my when I was 16. Of course, during all these things, the social side is so much fun. You're away from your family and stuff. So that kind of like made up for it. But I was having a great time, and had a nice party and all that sort of stuff. But I knew that the reason I was there, I'd failed at. And then so to go to in 2007 and to get on the podium, and this was something that was kind of sad. This is kind of an interesting one, actually. I did absolutely realize that the previous years, I'd been 1 year earlier, I'd been in Belgium and hadn't done very well. And I had friends, and you make friends with all the other teams. But suddenly I got on the podium and people wanted to be my friend. And I was like, that's kind of cool, but also this is pathetic.
Right.
Right. And suddenly I'm like, I was kind of like, well, that's really shallow. It shouldn't really be about that. And we had a joke about, I wonder if I can say this. Well, I'm sure he won't mind because he's our friend. But Benny was known in the British team as he would only talk to you if you made a final. That was the joke that was being made about him. Now, fairly or not, don't know. But that was the joke that was being made. Is you made a final. Benny will talk to you.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, he was 15-year-old kid or whatever. So whatever. Yeah. But
well, bred into a family that
he's a winner.
By now, like this, by the time your episode will come out, the one with Vincent would already be out.
Yeah.
And one other thing he said, which I knew just by knowing the Stahlbauers all these years, is that they were bred and brought up respecting the sport.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
So in a twisted way, if you made the finals of Europeans, you were worthy enough of having a conversation.
Yeah. Well,
at least about skiing.
For sure. I mean, but I feel a little bad because that's not maybe an unfair thing to say about Benny in the light of him being a great person now and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, that was just the joke we would make in the van at the 15 years ago. But yeah. So yeah, just the validation. You kind of go, well, fine. I've worked this hard, and okay, I didn't win, but I'm somewhere near the top, and this shows that I can do it. And when I was under pressure, I mean, I went off the dock second to last, and the top score at the time was 2:11, 2:38, and I ran 2:38, and actually, that was, and this is actually quite an interesting one. You've talked to Marcus, and I've talked to Marcus a little bit as well, and he, the flow point thing that he says was when like my understanding of when we had our conversation was that it's when you're in a slalom pass and you're not really doing it. It's just happening and it's going really well. And I wish I could tap into that, but I've probably had it 10 times in my life. That was
completely normal.
The very first time was on my 12 meters running away from the dock. In that Europeans, and I remember thinking, this is weird. I literally it's just all happening, and I'm doing a perfect turn, and the ski's just moving, and I'm just holding onto the handle, and it's all the muscle memory is just flowing through me.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I ever felt that, and I was like, well, that's cool. That's cool. Hey, I've done that. I can do that every time now. Well, sure enough, it hasn't happened much since.
Right.
But
But that's part of what in sports psychology we call a flow, right? So this almost like some people even explain it like as out of body experience, as the mind is completely clear, things happen naturally.
Exactly.
Time either slow for us. I was saying water skiing maybe slows down. The pass doesn't feel at 36. Like but it is not replicable at will.
No,
right?
but I wish it was. It would be. I mean, water skiing would be a lot easier if it was.
Yeah.
But I remember it. The closest I can say to how I can, and GoPros weren't around at the time, but it's like you're in your own head watching a video. So like a point of view shot from a head cam in a GoPro, and you're just watching it happen, and you're going, okay,
all right.
And so I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty awesome. And I just knew out of boy one I was going to run the pass. And I'd choked 100 times before. I wasn't like good in tournaments particularly.
Yeah.
Especially when there was pressure on. I was like, okay, I'm just going to run this, and I know it's going to happen. So yeah, I ended up running it, and then tying for first, and then got beaten. The last skier, so went to count back and got a medal, and so that was pretty cool. And I felt like I was, to use my dad's term, a contender, and that felt really, really good.
Was it the first time you felt a contender?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember when I won like a British Nationals. That was like, but this is like the next level of that.
Yeah.
So making the podium at an internationally recognized event, which again, ultimately people don't really care that much about it, but
no, it doesn't matter.
But I mean, to me, it was everything.
Yeah.
And so that was a big moment for me, for sure, huge.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what you said in your interview with Marcus, kind of like, because he asked you what's the point, but you said it like, to me, it's like, the competitive, the becoming better, like it doesn't matter if nobody recognizes it, or very few people or whatever.
No, but I mean, you're dead right. This is a pretty isolated sport where a lot of the effort, like any sport, a lot of athletes put in tons of effort and don't get what they want. And winners are celebrated because they were able to do it at the time. But, people that for every Olympic Games, every, football tournament, whatever it is, darts tournament.
Oh yeah. We can go there whenever you want.
They've put in, there's people always go, oh yeah, well, this guy, he's just the result of blood, sweat and tears. And, he never stopped practicing. There's 20, 30, 100 other guys that never stop practicing.
Yeah.
They don't get that.
Yeah.
They're seen as almost on the other side of it. They tried really hard. They're not good enough. They didn't make the grade. And that's sport. So what we're doing, I mean, we all train as hard as we possibly can and go do all the things that we do. And I've done it before. I mean, I remember that my aim when I go to a water ski tournament these days is to be able to sit on the dock and go, I couldn't have done anything different. I wouldn't change anything. Wouldn't change a thing. I ate well. I trained well. I rested well. I did everything. Good
gym, equipment, good decisions.
I can't think of a moment where it went wrong.
Yeah.
And those are hard, but because then if you screw up, and I remember like Masters 2 years ago was an example of that. I sat with you on the dock straight afterwards. I made the final, which was only the second time I made the final there. And I kind of just smiled. I went, oh, damn, I hit a roller. And I hit a roller and it affected me badly because it was a deficiency in my technique. But I went, well, I have been a machine at water skiing this last month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever. Like I've had one goal, which was to win the Masters. I didn't get it, and that really hurts. But do I regret how I trained? No.
Yeah.
Do I regret that I put in all this effort and still got a crappy result? Maybe, because I could have been having a lot more fun. I didn't have fun the last 2 months because I wanted to enjoy this moment, but I didn't. I'm not enjoying this moment because I suck.
Yeah.
So that's I don't remember how we got onto that, but
doesn't matter. That's a tricky.
That's a tricky one to kind of to go through. You you do need to have that balance. Probably going off topic here, but you do have to have that balance. Like I've had it before, where you go as hard as you can, and it doesn't work out, and just another loser who didn't add up, and that's certainly how you feel. And I read somewhere a few years ago that athletes in general are some of the most insecure people, because, and I think that you almost force yourself to, it's chicken and egg, right? But I think that there is something in. I remember thinking at the time, I'm like, that's just ridiculous, because these athletes, they all achieve and they must feel so good about themselves. But then you get to the point where you win a big tournament, and then that's enough for you for a week, maybe 6 months.
Yeah. And
then you go, okay, well, that's now kind of, I've got to live up to that. It's kind of hanging around my neck. I need to, I need to keep going. I need, so it's, and then you mess up, and you're like, I am the worst. I suck.
Possible,
I am awful. There is no one worse than me. And I self-hatred and anger. So you kind of, it's a real. And you say I love football. I do. I mean, I've been a big Man United fan for my whole life, and kind of die hard. Slightly less and less, because I think I'm more. I would love to, before I would go and have a beer with any of the footballers that I like, particularly, it would be the cricketers, because they're more on my level. Because, they seem like they have a bit more of a normal life. The footballers, they can go and lose the Champions League final and sit on the ground and cry and, and it hurts to lose. But then they'll go back home to their multi-million house, they'll get in their nice car, and they know that age 35, when they retire, they don't have to work for the rest of their lives, assuming they're not stupid.
Or assuming, there's a long conversation to be made there, because, for instance, we do know that a lot of professional footballers and professional athletes in the US tend to be bankrupt.
Yeah, which I just have. Right? I just, sorry, but I have less than zero.
Sympathy for
sympathy.
Yeah.
I honestly, if you're gifted doing something that you supposedly love with huge amounts of money, and then you go bankrupt, you deserve it. And I have no time for you. And I'm sorry. I mean, I don't want to sound, but because I know that I never ever want to cry poverty. Never do. I mean, but it's not a surprise to anyone that water skiing is not something where you make tons and tons of money and you're going to go retire to the Bahamas.
Yeah.
This is I had a conversation with a young guy who's really, really good at water skiing, and this is 2-3 days ago, and he was asking me, we had this conversation, what am I going to do after I finish university? And he said to me, well, what are you going to do when you finish this? I mean, you haven't, he didn't say it in these horrible negative terms, but he pretty much went, you haven't got a career, I can understand the thought process, and it is there. You haven't got a career. What's your next thing after this? Well, that's a tricky one, but I certainly made the decision that I'm all in on this, and I work at a ski school. I've got very lucky to have my amazing sponsors, and tournaments go well. I can make some money, but the footballers that kind of have all that money, and okay, they have a bad day at the office. Well, any water skier, we've all done it. We've gone to a tournament, spent $2,000 getting there, messed up the first round. Second round doesn't even mean anything because it's cumulative,
right? And
you're like, why the hell did I come here? I could have spent that $2,000, $3,000, and gone on a holiday with some friends,
saved it, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. But literally, if I had to spend that money, if I had to spend that money, I would go and spend it right now. I'd go spend it on anything else than what I just did.
Yeah,
because that was just a waste, and I've not got really anything out of it.
Yeah.
So, those are the negative sides of this sport. But of course, so many positives, and when it goes well, it's like it couldn't be better. Because also, there is something where you go, well, this is a very pure sport in a lot of ways. When people do it, people have negative ways of making it impure, which is a shame. But for the most part, all the guys I ski against, it's pure. It's for the love, because no one's going, hey, I'm going to sit here and get a paycheck and wait this out, and we're not Gareth Bailing it, like sitting on the bench at Madrid and making £500,000 a year.
Right.
Everyone's got a little side hustle. Everyone's doing something to make it work. No one's really a pro skier anymore. Everyone's getting money from their sponsor, from their ski sponsor to develop skis, and that's like a big part of their gig. Ski school, real job,
right?
Whatever it is. So it's very pure in that way. And so I know that like when I achieve something, winning a Worlds, winning a Masters, I'm like, I went all in, and I did it. And so I look at myself I can really feel very happy, and that the achievement was not done for anything else but this. Because I'm not, when I won the Worlds, I think I lost money. Because that's probably an exaggeration, but I certainly didn't get any bonuses really.
Well, you certainly didn't make any money by winning.
No, I didn't.
Like by virtue of just getting a gold medal.
No, hell no. No. So I might have had a bonus, and I did, but anyway,
No, you're making the point, and I think you're being fair and making that point. But the drawbacks of that also, as you said, come with some kind of like. I don't want to say, no, it's not advantage. It's like come with some positives, right?
Yeah.
So what Marcus said, that probably in other sport is growing in a more organic way, because people like you are not, like their livelihoods depend not entirely on scores, on performances in those tournaments. Sucks, because you would want to think that that's how you make your living, but it's bringing the sport up in a different way, right? So it is definitely an interesting moment to be a competitive water skier, or to be a fan of water skiing, watching competitive water skiing. And I find it interesting that going back to our storyline, you talk to someone who's now in university. Now you went to university as well, but you didn't do the sort of thing that a lot of European skiers that are committed tend to do, or were already doing, meaning maybe doing collegiate skiing in the US, getting a degree here and still skiing. You decided to stay in the UK.
Yeah, and you were a big part of that. You may not know this. I may have told you this before, but this is kind of a funny moment. I remember we were 2008. I'm 18 years old. I've just left school, and I decided to take a year out before doing my university, and I was kind of going to organize that, and I didn't really know where I was going to go, and it was kind of like I'm not going to say it was 50-50 to go to the US, but I knew it was an option. And there was a moment in time, I remember it so well. I was like, I'm not going to the US. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And that was when, you remember this is where we really became friends. It was actually the first time I met you, was in
Finland, European under-21s.
2008. And that was probably the best international tournament I've ever been to, because you probably remember it too. How good it was. Like we had like a water park, we had a little bar in the hotel. There was like, you could go and have a beer, and you could play pool, and
exactly. We had a water park. Like, let me just correct. We had a water park in the hotel.
In the hotel. In the hotel.
Crazy.
And so everyone was staying in this hotel, so it was just fun the whole time. And you look at it now, and if I was going to go and try and win a tournament, I probably wouldn't spend 4 hours of my day in the water park.
Yeah, of course.
Hiding around the bends in the slides, scaring people as they come past. Or drinking beer in the evenings. But that was unbelievably good fun.
Yeah.
But I remember very well, we're sitting in that bar one night, and like I'm like with the British team. Didn't really know anyone. I knew a few, but and like I said, just got to know you and Claudio and like Alvaro La Madrid, and just like a lot of the guys who would at the university, and
Alvaro Moreno de Carlos. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You're right. So
there were a lot of kids there that were in university in the US.
Yeah. Exactly. And I remember sitting there, and everyone knew each other. I'm like, this is a bit weird. I don't like this. I remember thinking this like really strong. I'm like, I don't want my life to be skiing. I don't want everything to be water skiing to me, because like I said, going back to that kind of like separation. And in that moment, I said, I'm not going to go to a university in America, because I do want to have a separation. I want to have my water skiing as like a, kind of going like in line with my parents, like to have it as like, to get away a little bit from, my incredibly stressful life that I had. I mean, I'm kidding, but you know what I mean? Like, I just wanted to have it separate. So from that moment, I was like, okay, that would have been August. And so I, started to apply to universities, and I was like, no, not even going to consider going to America. And I remember sitting there. I remember who I was looking at, and you were one of them. And I was like, I'm not doing this. And not because I didn't want to have friends that were in skiing, but I wanted to have friends who were in skiing, and I wanted to have my friends who weren't in skiing.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw that as a win. I could like kind of have both sides. I could cheat and have both of it. So so then I ended up going to university at Royal Holloway in right next to Thorpe. So where I'd skied my whole life. My first ski set there in 94, 95, and ended up going to university there. And I started working there, I think that summer or the previous summer. So it made sense. So it was really cool. Like, and I could still ski with John, and I was 15 minutes. I mean, really 10 minutes. And I didn't get my driver's license until I was like 21 or something. So I went to university there, and I would cycle there instead of getting the train. And I would cycle 15 minutes, and often I would wake up in the morning, little bit of a hangover because, been out the night before, student stuff, Friday, Saturday night. But I was still had my block booking Saturday morning, Sunday morning, because I'd moved to the morning.
And you can't cancel them.
Can't cancel them.
Right.
And I was working there at the time, so I was, they were free. But if I cancelled them, my boss, John's gone from being my coach to my boss, he would kill me, because he's like, you're just going to not ski because you're hungover, and I could have sold that. Yeah. You're fired. So I was turning up. And so, that was where I was for the next, 3 years. And I would wake up in the morning, go to the lake, literally, steal a kebab off someone's chest where they'd fallen asleep with it, eat that on the way to the lake, or eat that when I got to the lake. And then I'd, put my dry suit on, ski 2 sets, jump in the boat, drive for 4 hours in the freezing cold. And there was often like ice on the windscreen when I'm finishing the day. It was that cold. That happened once, but I remember just being like, oh my God. But yeah, so university in the UK, and wouldn't change it for the world. Like I said, I wouldn't change much. I really wouldn't, because I think everything's kind of lined up for me. I've been very fortunate, but that I have such a good core of friends from university in England, and they John told me, who he said that he went to university, and he had a girlfriend who he didn't even tell that he was a skier, and he was like, oh, I'm just going to Belgium this weekend. She said, what are you doing there? And he's like, oh, he was like more private about it. Yeah. Me, I didn't really tell anyone that I was like, I went to university in like the start of, September 2009. And 1 month previous, I had won my first European Championships under 21, that's probably the biggest victory in my life in terms of how good I felt, because I'd finally won something. And, I really enjoyed that. 1 week later, and I don't want to give the wrong impression, but I was a 19-year-old kid. I won that Europeans, in Norway, which was just the best moment ever.
Because Martin won Finland.
Mm-hmm. Right? I came second. Martin won Finland. Yeah, I ran 5 at 11, and he ran 1 at 10. Low scores that year. Yeah. And the next year, I needed to go off the dock at 13, which I wasn't used to, and I needed to run 3 at 10.75, which was my PB, and I ran it. I ran 3 at 10.75, like last off the dock. And I remember I came back to the dock, and Steve Glanfield, the guy who who's just, we know Steve, he's our darts buddy. We go to the World Championships with him in darts, and he's a guy that's helped me more than anyone really in water skiing certainly over the last 5 years. And he was there, and just gave me this big bear hug. It was unbelievable. Yeah. And so we go out that night, big party, fly home the next day, didn't even change my clothes, from the night that I went from that evening after I went to that party in Norway, flew home, got home, went straight out, saw all my friends, and then I remember like I got a taxi home, and I don't know if I should admit this, but I got a taxi home and I went to get my wallet. I didn't have any cash. You couldn't pay in card. I had like not enough cash, so I basically just gave him what I had in English cash, and then gave him tons of Norwegian money and ran away. And because I hadn't changed my clothes, I was like, I hope that taxi man don't come and chase me down now. But
he's gonna listen to the Water Ski podcast and find.
He's a big fan, dude.
Prick.
He's a big fan. But so then 1 week late. So okay, 2 days later. And this probably was one of the other, like I had these two sort of defining moments of my skiing career within a week of each other. 2 days later, I'm like on the party trail. Like I'm turning up to do a bit of skiing at Thorpe, but I can't,
You're European champ.
Yeah, I'm champ. I was like, there was this song come out at the time called, it was some crappy song by like this guy called Tinchy Strider called Number One, but I blasted it the whole week. And I was like, so like I would have been just this smug little bastard. I mean, I'm sure I was hateful to be around, but Duncan Hancock phones me like on the Tuesday or Wednesday, and he goes, "Hey, we got the Princess Pro-Am this weekend. Do you want to ski in it?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, I know I'm skiing in it, Duncan. I enter it every year." And he goes, "Do you want to ski in it as a pro?" And I'm like, "A pro? Oh my god, yeah, right." Because like someone had dropped out, whatever, and they need to make up numbers. Right. So then I'm like, all right. So I go to Prince's and have it like train that week, and it was cool. I remember like I turn up the first day, and it's like Billy, Susie, and John Travers. They were training, and I'm like, God, these guys are legends.
Right.
Oh my God, I'm mixing with them. Like, this is crazy. So first off the dock that weekend, my first pro event, and I'm first off the dock, and I ran 3 at 10.75, 3 at 39, my PB. And I remember, like, I would have gone out, I guess, at 14, so I ran 39 away from the dock, I think. But coming back to the dock, like, you remember Prince's, it had this kind of like where you'd get ready to ski at the tournament dock, there was this sort of almost peninsula, like this kind of little bit that sticks out from the lake. Yeah. And they, like, all the pros were there, like, screaming and clapping, and they were about to ski, and I was like, oh my God, like, these guys are so cool that they're like giving me, like, they don't know who I am. I'm just a loser who's like nowhere near as good as these guys. And
made it in the tournament a few days ago.
Yeah, made it in the tournament, and I ran 3 at 10.75, and they were so nice. And I think that was just a really cool moment because, and then it stood up. Like, I think after that round I was like 6th.
Yeah.
It's a hard place to ski, whatever. And I mean, I didn't know any different. I was used to skiing in England.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, there's 2 more rounds, and its best score goes through. So I've got to stay in the top 8 to go to the head-to-head. Well, we'll see. They're all going to do better than me next round. Well, still, in the next round, I was like 7th or 8th.
Still in. Yeah,
and so and I ran 3 at 10.75 again, so I had a backup score.
Yeah. And
so in the third round, I think I don't know if they seeded it, but anyway, I messed up. I ran 2.5 at 11, and was like, I don't know if I was in tears, but I was like just devastated. Bottom of the hill. But I snuck in 8th place.
Right.
And so I made the final, and like Thomas de Gasperi his ski had got broken or had got lost on the way there. So I mean, there was a few things that lined up for me. Like, he would 100% have made the finals, and there's people that didn't ski as well, whatever. But I'd sort of snuck in, and the really cool thing was, so growing up, my old idols were, Andy Mappel, the Brits, but then like it was Marcus Brown. Like, outside of the Brits, Will Asher in there as well. Outside of the Brits, it was Marcus Brown and Chris Rossi. Right. And like I would, me and the guy Dimitri Karounis, the guy who I ski with in Greece, who's just second dad to me, unbelievable guy. But he was like, Fred, you watch these guys, Rossi, Marcus Brown, they ski the right way.
Yeah. Those were the years, mid-late 2000s, where like they were,
Oh, they were killing it, and they looked cool doing it. It looked cool. I mean, like, there was. We look at things technically, but like, I mean, just someone who's 15, you look what looks cool. These guys look cool doing it. They, dropping of the hip, the swing,
Yeah, no, I mean, on top of this, like, even looking at it technically at the time, that was what seemed to be the right way.
No,
so, like,
for
they
sure.
looked cool. They were running buoys. It seemed that they kind of stumbled upon something that nobody else really had. Maybe Jamie, kind of looked a little bit like that, but
yeah.
they were sort of like putting into words and trying to tell others how to do it. So those were exciting times.
Super exciting. I mean, and you know, that kind of, I remember being quite proud of myself age, you know, 15, 16, that I was the most West Coast guy in the UK.
Oh, there you go.
I was like, that was what I wanted to be, that guy, you know.
Yeah.
Super slalom nerd kid. Like, you know, so Chris Rossi was top seed. He'd run, you know, a few at 10.25, 41.
So this is head to head. You're against Chris first round.
Well, no, but that was the cool thing about it, was they had it where number one could choose who they wanted out of the bottom four. Number two could choose who was left, and then number three would choose the out of the two remaining.
And then the fourth would leave.
Yeah. So they get, there's like a big grandstand there, home crowd. Everyone's like pretty, like, I know all these guys who are all there, and they're pretty proud of me to make it. You know, like they were super cool to me that weekend. And so we're standing in front of this pretty damn big crowd, especially by water ski. You know, I probably remember it as this like massive, you know, like sort of Wembley style.
Right.
But and I remember like Duncan's like, so Chris, you know, you gotta choose who do you want? And Rossi's, his eyes did not leave mine, but he's going like head side to side, being typically very nice. He goes, oh, I don't know, Duncan, you know, there's so many good skiers, and like, you know, it's a real hard choice, but I don't know, it's really tricky, but I just think I'm going to choose, you know, the hometown favorite. I'm going to choose Freddie. But I knew he was going to choose me from the first moment because he was looking at me the whole time.
Right.
And I'm like, I wouldn't have had it any other way, because it's like when, I mean, bit of a sort of English football reference, but, you know, in the FA Cup where anyone can get anyone, it's a random draw. You know, when you get like Shrewsbury Town, you know, who gets Liverpool at Anfield, and they go, they're obviously going to lose, but they're so happy because they're going to go to Anfield, this home of passion and amazingness, and play this amazing team. So I was like super pumped to go against Chris Rossi. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to win, but, you know, I am going against my idol.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember, I mean, I haven't talked enough about Dimitri, who's been like this just unbelievable influence on my skiing, but he, you know, Rossi knows Dimitri from going to Portahelli in Greece, right, where I'll ski still. And I said to Rossi on the dock, I remember I said to him, man, Dimitri would be so happy to see this lineup. And you know, and he would have been. I mean, Dimitri, like the biggest water ski fan in the world. And so I think I was first off. I didn't really know how head-to-heads were, but I was first off. And so I ran, you know, I'd messed up in the previous round. I run my 38, I come back and I equal my PB for the third time in that tournament. Actually, like I was sort of consistently getting threes, and I run 3, and I was so happy.
Well, what kind of 3? Like a zigzag 3, or you turn 3, you pull to 4, didn't get it?
I don't really remember, which is sort of, I mean, you'd think I'd remember that, but I don't. I remember it was kind of like probably a pretty solid 3. Like I probably stopped. I couldn't have got to 4.
Yeah,
you know. Otherwise, I remember the day before I was just inside of 4, and I was bummed that I didn't get around 4 because it would have been PB. But no, it was kind of a pretty solid 3. And Rossi has to beat me. So I watch him and he gets around 4. And he beats me, and I like wasn't bummed in the slightest. I was like, you know, I couldn't have been happy. You know, like this guy's a better skier than me. He is my idol. Let him go through. Let him go win the tournament, which he did.
I made the final. Like, I mean, you made the final of the tournament. You didn't even know you were going to be a pro at.
Yeah, exactly.
I understand it, but like...
No, I mean, it had surpassed my expectations by
exactly.
huge. And I see my parents afterwards, and they're like, he nearly didn't get it. I'm like, yeah. Okay, Mum and Dad, you're being friendly to me. No. He really, like, he was stretching. I'm like, come on, whatever. Well, so I know Rossi now, and have a chat with him, and he did on his Spraymakers podcast the other day. He's like, yeah, I slow turn 1. I nearly didn't get it, and I'm like, wow, I nearly had him. Right. You know, I learned 10 years afterwards.
Yeah.
But I mean, and so I think I tied for 5th in that tournament and got a check. I mean, I made 700, 800 pounds, whatever, and went and bought a bike, which I still have.
There you go.
Which I then used every 3 days a week at university to get to the lake.
Yep.
You know, so.
But that's a cool. Going back to the uni, like I think a lot of the reasons why, you know, the names that you dropped before, say someone like Claudio or myself, decided to make the move to go to the US was that we said, okay, if I am to go to university and I want to combine skiing, where I am right now, I can't do it.
Yeah.
So the US seemed like a good option. Like, I think for you it made a lot of sense, especially because you were able to combine like all that you wanted, right? You were able to ski tons, you were going to university, and you had that sort of like group outside of skiing of friends where you maintained that balance.
Yep, 100%. And there's probably 2 places in England you can do that, and that's Hazelwoods,
University of
right
Lincoln.
right next to Lincoln. A lot of people did that, and then there's a lot of people. Well, maybe not like there's been some skiers, maybe not some super high level, let's go and make international tournaments that have gone to Royal Holloway, and gone to Thorpe. But it made the most sense for me because I was, able to train, and I had like, man, I mean, sadly I'm not in England as much as I would, as I'd like to be to see my friends. But whenever I go back, I see all of these guys from my days there, and it was cool because. There, like I had also seen that a little bit where you're almost in water skiing, you can be, and it's still there. Your value to people is judged on your results.
Yeah.
To some degree. It can be positively, if you're a shitty person but you run a lot of buoys, you can be seen as a great person.
Yeah.
And that I had seen that previously. I mean, that like suddenly I was more valuable to people when I made a final or when I'd got on the podium versus previous. So
that was always very evident for me growing up as well. Something I didn't like about the sport.
It's horrible. Yeah. It really is. And I see it now. Like people say, oh, that guy, I don't know about him. And I'm like, oh, I really like him. Oh, he's only nice to you because you run boys. And you're like, oh, that sucks. I thought he was cool. But anyway,
right.
I mean,
right.
Not that often, but it's happened. But I mean, these guys who I love them to death. Like I had a gang of 6, 7, or 8 guys, guys and girls who if I went and fell on my first pass, they didn't know, or if I told them, oh my god, I had a really crap weekend, like I went away, they'd be like, well, you know what, Fred, let's have a beer.
Yeah, exactly.
And and let's have some fun. So that was really cool for me, and I would like I said, wouldn't change that. And then
that sort of balance of like the other side of the medal, right? You go to the lake, I kind of didn't do well on that test, or like I have this issue here and there.
Yeah.
And John will go, okay, let's go through 13, let's rip, So yeah. I can see how that balance served you well, and it certainly served you well because in those 3 years, you improved a shit ton.
Well, so
talk about that.
But okay, it's funny you say that. And I think the result was there. But okay, so I had this amazing, week and a half, 10 days, where I won my first international tournament, and then I went to go against Chris Rossi and make a final, and these were defining moments. And then we talk about things that hang around your neck. The next year, I messed up at the European Championships, and I didn't make the final at the Prince's Pro-Am. And I was like, man, I wish I was as good as last year. That's a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
So the following year, so that was 1920, then 21. Again, I actually won a European Championships again. I ran 5 at 39 at Cesena and won that, which was great. But again, didn't make the final. And I'm like, why did I do it 2 years ago and I can't do it now? But I put the pressure on myself. It's really easy going in green. It's harder to kind of when you've got that self-pressure. So, and I started to realize that, I'm not. I thought 2 years ago when I had that great little season that I was really on path. I'm not on the path anymore, and I'm not running the 39 that I want to run. I'm not running 10.75, and you see the scores coming from abroad, and oh man, this is kind of rough. So what I did was, so 2011 they had a World Championships in Russia,
yep.
And so I got myself a gym trainer, and my big aim was to go to the World Championships. And I knew that I wasn't going to make it as an individual, so I had the British team, which was still sort of funded. I mean, it was really on the way out, but it was still kind of there. There was something. And so the head of the performance, the performance director, whatever guy he was, who I'd never really thought he liked me, and I never really thought he took me particularly seriously. I phoned him up start of the year and I went, and I certainly back then, I'm not that organized now, but I certainly back then I was completely useless. Like really, really useless.
Okay.
But I decided, right, I'm going to be organized. So I phoned him up and I said, hey, I'm going to be in your world's team. You got to put me in that world's team because you're not going to win. I mean, I didn't say it, but Britain wasn't going to win a medal. So just put me in the team. I'm going to do everything I can to show you that I'm going to be the guy that you should take. So I got myself a gym guy, like someone to train with, who was just amazing. And sadly, rest in peace. That it really, Neil Shannon, absolute legend. And I got super fit. And that guy was like, right, we're going to get you drilled. And I was in the best shape of my life. I mean, I've since surpassed it, but not by much. I was like compared to what and I was a uni student, so like all the pressure to do with partying and social stuff, and I was killing it. So I go to the test. We had these sort of like performance tests, which some of the countries do. You're on a rower, you're doing pull-ups. I killed everyone. I mean, okay, Glenn wasn't there, Will wasn't there. He was in the States, but I just all the younger guys. I mean, I was like 1.5 times ahead. And I went to, I was like, okay, just got to get the scores now. And I was kind of getting, halfway through 10, 7, 5, 39, like maybe 4s and 5s, but I wasn't really running it. And they didn't select me. And that was like, I felt like quitting on the spot. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm not as good as I was 2 years ago. I'm not going to the World Championships. Like, this is horrible. And so, but actually, after a day of wallowing, I was like, no, you know what? F this. I'm gonna show him. I hate that guy that didn't select me. I hate him. Right. He is gonna be sorry.
Right.
And so I sat down with John and Nathan, who my very, very good friend. And Nathan, we were living together for the summers that year and the previous year. He'd been working at Thorpe and talk about. If you talk about underappreciated drivers in the world, he's one of them. He's one of the best there is. So I said to John, look, John, I want to change my training a little bit. I want to do a bit more down the line stuff. I want to do, short drop times. I want to just simulate tournaments a little bit because I feel like every time I go to a tournament, I'm rushed. Nathan, will you drive because you're an amazing driver? John, will you sit in the boat and watch? And John was busy with a few things, but basically, long story short, basically ended up skiing more often than not, just me and Nathan. Mm-hmm. John had his own job and stuff, but, and also it's hard to, let me tell you this. I mean, it's very hard to have your boss, your coach as your boss.
Yeah.
So huge issues there. And I've never been that good with authority anyway. So
likewise.
So that was a really weird dynamic, and me and John fell out. Both of our faults, obviously more his fault than mine, but
yeah, of course you would say that too, right?
I know. But so I ended up skiing with Nathan, and so halfway through 2011, I'm like, okay, I've got to change things up. Things aren't working as they are. So
by this time, let me see if I get this right. By this time, you haven't run 39 at a tournament.
No.
You had a 5, you remember?
5, yeah, a bunch of 5s, like a bunch of 5s. I ran a 5 at the European Championships, but didn't finish it. And it was sort of in my head. It was on my back,
Classic right foot forward score.
Yeah, I know. It's so annoying. But so then I get to, Nathan he is the most generous person I've ever met, and was just like we would. And I considered myself really at that time, more of a boat driver than a skier because I was working a lot at the lake. I was working, 3 evenings a week and then a morning, and then I would do like 1 till 9 on a Saturday and a Sunday when I wasn't going to do a tournament.
Yeah.
And those in a boat on your own, with huge gas tanks in it. So there's one 15-minute gas slot you do in like 8 hours.
Right.
So and then Nathan would be like, okay, do you want to ski? And I'm like, yes, I do. Let's do this. And so we would ski together, like morning or night, and he couldn't have been more accommodating. And I always think, whenever something goes right in a tournament, like the big wins I've had, you kind of go, well, I always think this wasn't, people like Steve Glanfield, Nathan, Dimitri Karunis, John, Ronnie Barton before the Masters last year.
Yeah.
Put so much time and effort into my skiing. And like in the times that it goes well, people want to know you. People think you're great.
Yeah.
But those guys who really just went above and beyond for me, driving me at 7 a.m, fitting me in between whatever and helping me, like these guys, invaluable. You can't do it without that. And so, I really hope that they see my gratitude, because, there's no way you can do it without that sort of thing. Because, as an athlete, you sacrifice things yourself. Like, I'm not going to go and sing karaoke on a Saturday night at 3 a.m, or whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is,
but then there's also but that's a sacrifice you're making for yourself. But the people make sacrifices for you. Mm-hmm. Before the Worlds in 2017, Steve Glanfield was at the lake 2 hours before his next skier, so that I could train at the time that I would ski at the World Championships.
Yeah, that's
insane. You can't, that is invaluable. So anyway, so Nathan was just unbelievable and fantastic boat driver, and that sort of made me realize that a good boat driver is really important, because if you can have consistency, then you can actually improve. And maybe that's something I hadn't
maybe keyed in before as much.
Yeah. So then I ran 39 at the end of that year. Like, it took me 4 years to run, between running 38 the first time to running 39.
Yeah,
which is like, for someone that age, pretty long time.
It is. So where was the first 39 running tournament?
So it was at the Seton Classic 2011, October 2nd, freezing cold, 5 mil dry suit, and 4-pass rule. You're only allowed 4 passes. So the whole week, I'm like, guys, please change that rule. No, that's the way it's been. This is we've done this tournament for 30 years. This is how it is. Okay, fine, understood. So I go out at 35 every day that week, and I think I can't remember the first or second round, but I run 35, 38, run my 39 away from the dock, one at 41 on the way back in, and that was cool. That was super cool, and that was like a big monkey off my back. And I did, and it was last tournament of the year, whatever, and in my huge Wiley and kicker, and it was and it was like my second week on my good nano twist that I loved.